Welcome back, listeners, to Unsolicited Feedback, where we don't leave success to chance because hope is not a business strategy. Instead, we lean on planning, leadership, and execution to get the results you want and build lasting resilience. I'm your host, Chuck Knabusch, the operations guy, with over 40 years of experience spanning the military, corporate America, and entrepreneurship. I've seen what works and what doesn't, and why execution is the key to turning great ideas and plans into reality. For those turning, oh, excuse me, for those tuning in live, drop your questions and comments in the chat. I love a good discussion. And for those catching this later, you can always reach me at chuck@1310.com. That's chuck at 13ten.com. As time is valuable, let's jump right into today's topic: using an after action report for operational or continuous improvement. Back in the day, when I was a production manager walking the floor and working with supervisors, I'd stop by each cell and have a quick review with that cell coach about their cell's performance. While we'd go through actual safety, quality, and production metrics, we'd always focus on what I learned from the military as an after action review, or AAR for short. It's a simple way to capture what happened and make plans to improve outcomes. Every military exercise I participated in had an AAR, and from the lessons we learned, we got better. Over time, I've taken the essence of sometimes long, complex performance reviews and distilled them down into just 5 focused questions. Okay, I hear some of you even now saying how you're used to hearing from hosts explain how the audience can or should do this or do that. Yep, I can certainly do that. But why not take the approach by learning how I can actually improve my own podcast? Because I know the other parts of my audience are saying, why doesn't he apply what he knows to himself? Gotcha. I agree. It's always more difficult to look at yourself and make improvements. Wouldn't you agree? So who out there's looked at coworkers, family members, neighbors, and said to themselves, if only they'd do X, Y, or Z, they'd be better in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, me too. But this show isn't about pointing fingers. It's about taking action. So let's get right to it. So as a proponent of improving operations, whether through innovative breakthroughs or continuous improvement, let's take this practice and apply it to my podcast, Unsolicited Feedback, using this continuous improvement approach of an after action review. And yes, I know this is only episode 2, but after my performance on episode 1, I wanted to go ahead and get better. While it sounds simple, let's see how easy it really is. So, what is an after action review? Well, as the name states, it's a review of the operations after they've occurred. We want to do it quickly after completing our process or operation, as we have a tendency to forget things. I started my review immediately after my podcast finished. I started my review immediately after my podcast finished. As my podcast production is pretty small, with just me and one other person behind the scenes, I also reached out to an audience member and my business coach to get feedback the following day. What are the components of an AAR? Well, as I said, there's only 5 questions. Pretty simple. What went right? What went wrong? What would I do differently? What resources did I need but not have easy access to? And finally, what needed to be reprioritized in order to achieve success? So let's jump right in. First, what went right? Notice on this particular question, we don't put an individual in the question. It's not a personal issue or trying to shoot for glory. It's simply an outcome or process question. When something goes well, we need to be able to articulate it and capture it. Why? Simply because we want to repeat it. But it has to be more than just performance outcomes. Yeah, things went well. We achieved our goal. We expect to achieve our goal. So what contributed to achieving that goal? We go into the process expecting to achieve the goal, so we need to dig a little bit deeper. We need to ensure we know why or what contributed to go ahead and making it a success. Because if we can't articulate what went right, how do we know we'll be able to do it again? Do we just get lucky? Is hope how we manage our business? Definitely not. How do we ensure it happens again? Well, let's apply it to my podcast. First of all, what went right for me? Well, I had no technical glitches. Had a wonderful individual backstage, ensuring that the stream was live, uninterrupted, and the audio and visual was working smoothly. My topic? I had a clear and focused topic to which I spoke, core values. For those who could see the video, there were concise visuals for the various points that I was trying to make. And actually, I'm kind of proud of those and the content. Next, I believe I got my point across on the topic by outlining my 5 core values and how those values interlink, creating additional unwritten or unspoken values. And finally, I launched a podcast, something that others had encouraged me to do, but I'd always resisted. I never realized that people might actually want to listen to what I have to say in this format. But I had the courage and the boldness to go through with the launch. Were things perfect? Absolutely not. Will they get better? Most definitely. So the next item in a good AAR is what went wrong. Again, this is focused on outcomes and process steps, obstacles, not people. No blame games here. It can include performance metrics, objectives, or process steps. It can mention that tools or resources that weren't available. Anything that went wrong should be outlined. We're not solving issues just yet, just capturing them. So what went wrong for me? Well, first, I don't believe I was sufficiently polished. Probably not in this one either, but I'm getting better. Some might say that lack of polish shows an authenticity, while others might argue that it could or should have been smoother. I want to be better. Yes, I could edit my podcasts and not stream them live. We can cut and paste and slice and dice them, but that seems like a lot of additional effort, and I'm not sure that the value add is there for me or even you, the listener. Next, I lost my timer window on my screen. I have a clock on my screen that should have told me how much time I'd spent live. With all the other screens open that I was using, I lost the timer window. It meant that I cut short what I was thinking because I thought I was going long. I'd planned that podcast should be about 15 to 25 minutes long. And that one, my first, I expected to take about 20 minutes, give or take. I was live for about 12 and a half minutes. I panicked. I felt I was going long and I jumped off. Things happen. I didn't really have a clear opening or closing. I use a sandwich strategy in telling stories, where the top bun is my intro and the bottom bun is my closing. Each should take, approximately 15% of my allotted time. Yep, didn't follow that, and my coach and I had a discussion on it. I also didn't have a call for action. Many consultants and coaches and even podcasters have a call to action. It might be asking the audience to reach out with a question or a comment, or outline something that they can do between episodes. But what I wanted or should have done was challenge my audience, my listeners, to take some time to think through their values. First and foremost, as an individual, and if you're a leader of a team, a department, or an organization, to think through those values too. Do you know what they are? If you do, are you living them? When were they last updated? Do they still make sense? Yeah, never did any of that. And I never mentioned when the next episode will air. If I'm interested in having people listen in when I'm live and possibly even interacting with them about the content, probably need to let them know when the next episode is going to be. Well, or how I can be contacted between shows. We'll improve. The next item in an AAR is what to do differently. Well, this one can be impersonal, and the question can be what to do differently. I kind of prefer a more personal question here. What would I or what would you do differently? If you're talking to subordinates or talking about myself, what would I do differently? As it kind of takes not only planning, but ownership. Either way, it's stated can work. The idea here is to immediately start planning on improving. Don't wait. Don't just hope it improves. What specific actions are going to be taken to ensure that it improves? Yes, if you can't articulate what you're going to do differently, you're bound to repeat the exact same mistakes and iterations. So this is critical. What am I going to do differently? First, practice before going live. At least the topic and the concepts of what I want to discuss, if not necessarily the script, but maybe that too. Practice to make sure it fits me. Practice to make a few polishing tweaks here or there. Create an outline so I know the major points I want to make. Take a bit more time to set up, ensure my timer window is visible. Yeah, it's right there. You can't see it, but I can. But so, and just to go ahead and save me from panicking later. Well, I think I have sufficient screen space. It never seems to be enough. And also because last time I was showing slides, so the MacBook that I use, when it goes into presentation mode, it kind of shows all the screens as my presentation. And it's great for focus, but not always great for some of the other situations that I deal with. But we can get better. I can possibly move some non-essential but important stuff over to my iPad in order to go ahead and cover this. I can create a basic outline for an opening and closing. While specific topics may change, I suspect a reasonable opening and closing can be used for quite some time and be used over and over again. Going back to that sandwich analogy, if I like crunchy French bread, why not use it? I don't have to switch to pumpernickel if I don't like it. Stick with what you know and what you like. And if you listen to my opening today, you might note that I've done a little bit of work there. Thought a lot about calls to action. Yeah, it wasn't just missing from my podcast, but I'm not that great including them in my online posts, whether LinkedIn, Facebook, or any other place. So it's definitely something I need to work on. What did I come up with? Well, I came up with a multi-level approach. Level one, always give the audience something that they can do by themselves, self-test or diagnosis, a challenge to think through, just something. Level two, I might offer some direction or possibly a guidebook that the audience can work on in order to go ahead and better grasp the concepts that I'm portraying. Level three, I can always reference my book, Hope is Not a Business Strategy. So a great way I can go ahead and do that. Even here, I can put it up on the screen. Hope is not a business strategy. So yes, I have a book. Always a great way to deal with that. And yeah, we're still struggling a little here. Fourth, offer the audience a way to interact. Either on the podcast or between podcasts, have a 30-minute call. And finally, encourage the audience to reach out and engage with me, possibly as a coach or a consultant, whatever makes sense for you. And you'll notice there'll be a call to action as we wrap up this episode too. So the first two questions kind of focused on process steps and outcomes. The third question was about plans and taking action. So now we want to talk about resources. What resources did you need but not have access to? Well, this can range from what resources your process expected to have in place and didn't, to what was just difficult to get. Could be due to the placement of the resources, the reliability of them, or as mentioned previously, not having access to them. So, quick story. When I was in the military, one of the things I did was operate a remote communication site, supporting a battalion within the division, enabling both voice and data communication between the various elements. To operate our communications equipment, we had generators to create power, but we needed fuel to power those generators. we leave our motor pool with about 6 5-gallon cans of fuel, or about 24 to 36 hours supply. We deployed once without knowing where we were going to get replenished. And while we scrambled, because fuel was running low, we ran out. Yep, it was overlooked. Only once. Lesson learned, definitely a topic of our after action review. So in some ways for my podcast, this question doesn't apply nearly as much because I'm the primary provider of resources. I'm a solo operation. But yep, I still needed to think it through. Was I missing something that I needed, or didn't have access to something that would have helped? Well, in my case, it was kind of the timer. So in some ways, that timer window falls into it. And whether I go ahead and make space on my screen, or I put a timer on my iPad right next to my MacBook, I can go ahead and have that covered going forward. For a process or a team, a department, or a functional area, or an entire organization, I'd suggest the facilitator for the AAR ask, what resources did you need but not have easy access to? Easy question. Do you foresee some resource issues in the near future? If so, what are they? What type of assistance might you need to obtain those resources? This is where leaders can get either a heads up or some feedback about where they should have stepped in. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of not micromanaging, but I'm also one that won't throw my team to the shark-infested waters either. So great question. Finally, what needed to be reprioritized in order to achieve the desired results? We find a lot of times that we have multiple competing priorities, not always the best situation, but certainly one that shows up from time to time. This could go ahead and include policies, procedures, resources, or any number of other things. Sometimes you need a leader to help shake loose some resources that you need to accomplish your mission. You just don't have sufficient authority yourself to get it done. Look back at what you just did to see what could have helped, and also look forward to anticipate what possible issues can be prevented next time. Again, in the situation of my podcast, this wasn't really a question that I needed to reflect on, as I'm a one-person show. But anything that wasn't prioritized well could have been reflected in what went wrong. But this is a great time to make sure you caught it. So folks, that's an after-action review. 5 basic questions. What went right? What went wrong? What would I do differently? And what resources did I need but didn't have access to? Or what needed to be reprioritized in order to achieve the mission? So there, you can use an after-action. Where can you use an after-action review in the coming week? Yep, here's your call to action. If you want to learn new skills, you have to practice them. 5 questions. Are you finishing a project, completing a deliverable, providing a service or a product to a customer? It doesn't matter. Perform an after-action review once you're done. Should be simple. Maybe not easy, but simple. I'll leave a QR code to access the 5 questions for those who can't be writing while listening. I know, I'm probably one of them. Let me know how it went. Did you learn something? Can you improve something? So there's my QR code up there for those who are watching the video. Go ahead and scan it when you get a chance. So really, that's a wrap for this episode of Unsolicited Feedback. A big thank you to everybody who tuned in live. And for those who are catching the replay, just remember, success isn't about wishful thinking, it's about thoughtful planning and decisive action. Take what you've learned today and apply it to your business this week, because practicing those skills is the only way to improve. Want to dive deeper? Scan the QR code and get more info, or schedule a 30-minute one-on-one to chat. I'd love to hear how you're putting planning, leadership, and execution into action so that hope never becomes your business strategy. Until next time, the 1st of April. This is Chuck Knabusch signing off from Unsolicited Feedback.